There's 3 disturbing true au pair horror stories. 1. The Shadow in the Nursery. When Anna accepted the au pair job in a remote countryside mansion in England, she thought she had hit the jackpot. A hefty salary, free room and board, and only one child to take care of, 5-year-old Evelyn. The parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, were cold but polite, and Anna felt no reason to be uneasy. That changed on the very first night. Evelyn refused to sleep alone. She clutched Anna's wrist with tiny fingers, eyes wide with fear. "Please don't let the shadow come in," she whispered. Anna assumed it was a child's overactive imagination. She reassured Evelyn and tucked her in. But at exactly 2:47 a.m., she awoke to a strange sound, a low, raspy breathing. The nursery door creaked open by itself. Anna sat up, heart pounding. The hallway was pitch dark. As she reached for her phone to turn on the flashlight, she heard soft footsteps padding toward the bed. Then Evelyn screamed. Anna spun around just in time to see a tall, emaciated figure lurking in the corner of the room, its hollow eyes gleaming in the darkness. It had no lips, just jagged teeth set in a permanent grin. Before Anna could move, the thing scuttled toward her on all fours like a grotesque insect. She grabbed Evelyn and bolted from the room. The next morning, she told Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne. Mrs. Hawthorne's face went pale. Mr. Hawthorne simply sighed. "We told you she needed a companion," he muttered. "That thing, it doesn't like it when she's alone." Anna quit the next day. But weeks later, unable to resist her curiosity, she searched the house's history online. It used to be an orphanage. A cruel caretaker had locked several children in the basement, leaving them to die. And every au pair hired in that house had vanished without a trace. 2. The Smiling Boy. Clara arrived at her new au pair job in rural France, excited to meet the family. The Molière family had a beautiful old chateau, and their son, Etienne, was a sweet but peculiar 6-year-old boy. He was always smiling. Always. The parents left for a business trip soon after she arrived, leaving Clara alone with Etienne. The first night was peaceful. The second night, she noticed something strange. Etienne never blinked. His unbreaking stare sent chills down her spine. By the third night, she started hearing whispers in the walls. She checked on Etienne, who was standing by the window, giggling to himself. "What's funny?" Clara asked. "He says he likes you," Etienne said. "Who?" Etienne turned to face her, his smile widening unnaturally. "The boy in the walls." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. She laughed nervously, assuming it was an imaginary friend. But that night, while sleeping in her room, she heard it. Scratching. Long, deliberate scratches against the wooden walls. Then, a soft giggle. Her heart thundered in her chest. She grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the noise. In the dim glow, she noticed something horrifying. The wallpaper near her bed had been peeled away, revealing an old wooden panel beneath it. A small, jagged hole had been carved into the wood, barely big enough for an eye to peek through. And someone was watching her. She screamed and backed away. Etienne's voice came from behind her. "He wants to play now." Clara grabbed her phone and called the police. When they arrived, they searched the house. Behind the walls, they found a hidden passageway. And in that passageway, they found bones, human bones, and a diary written by a boy who once lived there 100 years ago. The last entry read, "I don't want to be alone anymore. I will wait for a friend." Clara never saw Etienne or the Molière family again. Nards 3. The Doll That Watched Me Sleep. Mara had been an au pair before, but never in a house as old as the one belonging to the Lockwood family. Their daughter Isabella was quiet and obedient, except for one strange habit. She always carried around an old tattered porcelain doll. "Her name is Lottie," Isabella said. "She watches over me." Mara hated that doll. Its glass eyes seemed too lifelike, too knowing. One night, Mara woke up feeling like she was being watched. Her room was dark, but the doll, Lottie, was sitting on the chair in the corner. Mara was sure she had left it in Isabella's room. Shaking her head, she returned it. The next night, Lottie was back in her room. This time, she was sitting on the edge of Mara's bed. Mara's skin crawled. She took the doll and locked it in the attic. The scratching started soon after. At first, it was faint, like mice scuttling in the walls. But soon, it turned into frantic, desperate clawing, and then whispering, "Let me out." Mara barely slept that night. The next morning, she told Isabella's parents, but they brushed it off. That night, Mara locked her door. But at 3 a.m., a loud thud against the door jolted her awake. Something was outside. She reached for her phone, but before she could call for help, the door creaked open. And there it was, Lottie, sitting in the middle of her room. Mara froze in terror. The doll's head twitched, then its painted lips curled into a grin. A child's voice whispered from within the porcelain, "I like this room better." Mara ran. She quit the next morning. Weeks later, she learned that the Lockwood family's previous au pair had vanished without a trace, and when the police searched the house, they found something chilling in the attic, a pile of old, broken dolls, and inside one of them, human teeth. These stories are whispered among au pairs who have worked in strange houses, taking care of children who may not be as innocent as they seem. So if you're ever hired as an au pair and you hear strange sounds in the night, run.